the Center, and you are listening to Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. It is Wednesday, January 24th, and we have had a fantastic day right here at the Rock Health and Wellness Center. And this is an awesome day because 26 years ago today, we were anticipating the birth of our first child. And tomorrow we're going to celebrate that birth. So, happy birthday, Jacob. I hope you're having a great day, and I hope you have a happy birthday tomorrow. So it's a great day at the Rock. We've been at it since 7:30 this morning, been taking care of people, been having some awesome stuff happen in the office today. Lubbock, Texas has been wet today for all you guys out there in the cold and the wet. Thank you for working outside. Thank you for taking care of the world and making the world move forward. We really do appreciate that. Tonight is our book review night. Tonight is we're working through The Master and His Emissary by Ian McGilchrist. We are talking about the brain and the different hemispheres of the brain. We're getting into chapter 2, which is I said it took me about 6 months to get through chapter 2, but I really think I still even haven't gotten through chapter 2. So we've been working at it for over a year, I think, to get through the two different hemispheres. And it's what do the hemispheres do? What do the two hemispheres do is the name of chapter 2 of Master and His Emissary. So we're going to get into that tonight. We're going to try to be a little bit more fun tonight than we were last night. I know last night was a little bit intense there and kind of emotional. There just was some stuff going on yesterday. I asked for prayers from you guys, anybody that was out there, and just wanted to let you know that some of the stuff that we were dealing with yesterday has had some answered prayers. So there's been some positive movement in the issues that we're dealing with, and so it was thank you for all you guys who prayed for us yesterday and the people going through them. It's not me personally, but some of the people that we take care of that are strong members at the Rock Health and Wellness Center. And we're so glad for them that they got a little bit of relief and some help. So hopefully it can carry forward and help resolve some of the issues that they're going on. So tonight we're going to try to just try to make it a little bit more peppy tonight. See if we can get a little bit more positive energy and see if we can get into this book. And it's a complicated book. It's interesting because the show for this year with the Taking Health to Church that we do on Monday nights, and they're doing mental health in the Bible. Well, it fits right along with some of the things that we've been trying to do in the book. So when you get into the book, it's almost like the whole show is turned into a mental health session. And I really don't mean it to be that way. I'm really trying to set a foundation so that you can have a better idea of why your body's functioning the way that it's functioning. So that you can understand when you are dealing with certain things, that kind of why you're dealing with those things. And then some solutions to solve those issues. Because I don't think it's common knowledge. It's really the point of this show is to educate as many people as we possibly can really about the subluxation, the interference in the nervous system. That's really what we're all about. We've said it lots of times. You guys should know it by now. And the more we talk about it, because one thing I know for sure, I would be willing to bet you that the majority of you that are listening or watching this show, I think the majority of you I'm the only person that you've ever heard say that word, subluxation. That's probably a true statement. And because that's what that was what happened to me 24 years ago almost. Is I went to work in my brother-in-law's chiropractic office, and he was the only human being that I had ever heard say that word. So I didn't know what it meant, and I thought he was crazy. And it just was he could have made up any word that he wanted to, and I would have just it'd been like, whatever, I don't even know what that means. But it's taken me a long time to understand what that means, and it's taken me a long time to get this show going. It took me way too long to get this show going. And so, but I'm glad that we're able to do it. And by doing it, it just keeps overlapping and overlapping. And right now we're kind of in a little season of the show where we're talking about mental health. And and the mental health at the church with the Bible goes right along with every other kind of health. And we start in the brain, right? So it's super important. So when we're trying to break this Master and His Emissary book down, it's we're breaking it down from a wellness standpoint. And I really don't know anybody else out there that does that. Like, I know the show's not fabulous, and I know we've got some glitches and all the stuff that goes along with it, and everybody's busy and they got things to do, but I don't know where you can go out there in the world to understand how your brain works and how it works in relationship to your body. There's some chiropractors talking about it, and we are the ones that kind of do this work. We're the ones that try to help you kind of understand it together, and then tie it into the things that you deal with on a daily basis. That's what I really ultimately want you to understand. I want to share it with you that what we're really trying to do is help you understand, hey, my low back hurts on the right side, or I'm having trouble with the inside of my left knee. It's swelling up and causing problems. Or, I've got this plantar fasciitis on my right foot. Or I had one guy tell me today that, he said, where we used to take a broom handle and you'd hold a broom handle and then you'd take it back over the top of your shoulders and bring it back. He said, I can't do that anymore. He said, I used to could with a broom handle. I used to could hold a broom handle and take it over the top of my head and then bring it all the way back and then bring it forward again. But he said, it just goes back a certain distance and it just stops. My shoulders don't work like they used to. And it's not really that big a deal, except it is if it's your shoulder, right? If it's your shoulder, it's kind of a big deal. And you kind of wonder, well, how come my shoulder's like that? And it's like, well, what does Dr. Clemmons say about it? Well, can he map it back to my right frontal lobe? Yeah, I can. I can map it back to that right frontal lobe, right? And we know there's segmental issues in the shoulder. There's things that are happening just in the shoulder joint itself. But at the same time, let's start in the brain. Let's understand the brain. Let's start in the brain. Let's figure out what's going on from the right side and the left side of the brain. So we got a lot to cover tonight, and we're going to cover it in a more fun atmosphere. We're going to try to be positive and upbeat, and see if you guys can have a little bit more fun with the show tonight than we had last night. So I'm going to kind of tie it in together, and I'm just going to kind of go through here in the beginning. I just put some slides together. These are not very formal. It's not super great the way I've put them together, but there's just ideas that I think would be a great idea to kind of move through some of them and to talk about what is the purpose. So the purpose of the brain. This is the Master and His Emissary, Chapter 2. Why? And the name of it is, what do the two hemispheres do? Right? So that's what we're getting into. Last week, we talked about Chapter 1, about actual differences in anatomy between the two hemispheres. But now I want to talk about the function between the two hemispheres and what they actually do. And the purpose of the brain is to put us in touch with whatever is outside of ourselves. And one of the biggest ways that we do that is the way that we pay attention. And I want to go through these levels of attention right quick, because I think it's good to understand, what does that mean? Like, and we talked about it lots of times. We're going to just talk about it some more tonight. When we're talking about attention, what does it mean? And what are the different types of attention? And how does that affect the way that we function? Because really what we're trying to do is get in touch with our environment so that we can make decisions on our environment to determine what we're supposed to do with our bodies inside of our environment. So the conventional neuropsychological literature distinguishes 5 types of attention: vigilance, sustained attention, alertness, focused attention, and divided attention. While not identical, vigilance and sustained attention are similar, and they are often treated as one concept. Together with alertness, they form the basis of what is called the intensity axis of attention. The other axis is selectivity, made up of two remaining types, focused and divided attention. Experiments confirm that the different types of attention are distinct and independent of one another and subserve by a number of different brain structures distributed extensively over the prefrontal, anterior cingulate, and posterior parietal areas of both hemispheric cortices. Clearly, with either hemisphere, and possibly between hemispheres, the system of control process is complex. However, some broad, consistent differences in hemisphere specialization are striking when one comes to review the available evidence. So, what does he mean by that? Well, we bring the world's attention, we bring the world to us through our right hemisphere. And so it makes a difference to us because now that's what we act upon. So it's not so much what is in the world that causes us to act. It's what we bring into ourselves from the world that causes us to act. And like an example might be, you might be looking through your desk, or you might be looking through a drawer or something like that, and you're looking for something and you can't find it. You're just looking and you're looking and you're looking, and then all of a sudden you see a spider in the drawer. Like, the spider was in the drawer the whole time you were looking. You just didn't see the spider. You didn't pay attention to the spider. So the way that you acted inside yourself was one particular way with no threat. You were just looking through the drawer. You weren't worried about it. And then all of a sudden, you see a spider. You bring that spider that's in the environment into your brain, and you bring attention to that spider. And what does it actually do to the body, and how that makes the body change? Right? Like, we know that our body would change. Like, if we saw some menacing looking spider in the drawer, or if we were looking through the drawer and all of a sudden we turn something over in a drawer, like a book or whatever we have in the drawer, and we turn it over and all of a sudden there's that spider. Or let's make it even worse. Let's make it a scorpion. Right? Let's take it and turn it into a scorpion. It's like the scorpion was in the drawer the whole time. We didn't see the scorpion in the drawer. So the way we behaved in a certain manner, just going on about our business, until all of a sudden we see a scorpion in the drawer. And then we change our whole dynamics, right? We go into fight or flight response mode. We go into this, we're going to have a flushing sensation. We're going to have a quick increase in heart rate. We're going to have an increase in blood pressure. We're going to jump back. We're going to be startled. We're going to be like, oh man, I didn't see that right there, right? Some people will freak out, jump up on a table, or run away, or start screaming, or slam the drawer. Like, you see how the way that we pay attention to things, the attention that we bring to us, but that we bring to the environment, changes our physiology and our function inside of our body. That's part of the reason that I think it's so important to really grasp this idea of what these different types of attention do, and how they work, and which hemisphere of the brain they're in. Because like, I had a conversation with a lady today that is going through lots of stress. She's had a really stressful event that she's been dealing with. And she's like, it's so hard to focus. Like, I can't get any focus because it's so hard to keep my brain focused on one thing, because it's just racing all the time. It's always moving and it's always racing. Well, the reason that's racing is because it's on that right hemisphere, and that focused attention is on that left hemisphere. And we're so busy looking out for the threat in our environment that it's making us it's kind of breaking us down right there. And now we start to see the physiology change inside the body. So one of the things that the right frontal pole does, the so-called orbitofrontal cortex, essential to emotional understanding and regulation, and it has limbic system connection. So it gets down this part of the frontal pole actually has a connection with the limbic system, which gets into that emotional brain of that lower brain, right? And the right frontal pole regulates the HPA axis. And so what does that do with, what does that mean? What does the HPA axis mean? And what difference does it make? What difference does it make to you watching the show? What difference does it make to you if your right side and left side hemispheres are not firing properly or not working properly, right? Well, we know that this right side frontal lobe regulates the HPA axis. So let's talk about that just for a second. Let's go back to this old slide that we've covered a couple of times, and let's talk about where that stress response starts in the amygdala. And so now when we get that amygdala that has its stress response, and that's where now we look in the drawer, and all of a sudden we see with our eyes the scorpion that's in the corner of the drawer. And that comes into the central processing place, the thalamus, inside of our brain. It comes into that central processing place, and then it gets sent to the amygdala quickly. And the amygdala is now starting that stress response that's going to fire quickly into there's a whole neurology that goes along with your stress response. And as soon as that amygdala fires, that's where we fire this locus coeruleus. And the locus coeruleus is what floods the brain with adrenaline. Like it's norepinephrine inside the brain, but let's call it adrenaline. It's inside the brain. The adrenal glands really is where that, but inside the brain. But most of us understand what adrenaline means, right? So we're going to get this flood. All of a sudden, we're going to get this flood of adrenaline, or noradrenaline, to be technically proper, inside our brain. That's just going to flood. Well, according to Dr. McGilchrist, the right hemisphere has an affinity for noradrenaline released with new experiences, and these neurons do not fatigue. So you're not going to get tired from being stressed. Those neurons are just going to keep firing. Because why? Because, dude, there's a scorpion in the drawer, right? We don't want the scorpion we don't want to deal with that. So if we get into that situation to where now all of a sudden we fire that locus coeruleus and we flood the brain with that noradrenaline, then it's going to have an affinity for the right hemisphere. So the right hemisphere is now we're going to change our attention on the world. We're going to get off of focused attention. We're going to get over here to alertness, vigilance, right? We're going to get into those type of attentions that's dealing with that right hemisphere. And then that's going to fire the adrenal gland, because that right amygdala fired the adrenal gland. And then we've got this HPA axis. And that's what I wanted to get to, because I've gotten to it before, and because you might not understand exactly what that means. And so it's the hypothalamic pituitary axis. It's part of your brain. There's little different parts of your brain right there that gets fired up whenever you're in that stress response. Now, remember, when that happens, whenever you have a stress response, then let's take the scorpion in the drawer scenario. So now the scorpion in the drawer scenario kicks off that whole response, and in a microsecond almost, like in very short amount of time, you're going to have the amygdala fire, the locus coeruleus fire, adrenaline hits the right hemisphere. That you got information going to the adrenal glands. That's firing up to the HPA axis. Like all of a sudden, It's going quickly, right? But what am I going to do? I'm going to slam the drawer, right? Now, I slam the drawer and the threat is isolated. Now, I still know that there's a scorpion inside that drawer, but I can get away from it a little bit. I can back up. I can get back. I can now kind of calm down just a little bit so I can make a plan about what I'm going to do with this scorpion in the drawer. I can separate myself from the threat for just a second to give my brain a second. So what's that going to do? It's going to calm that whole system down. It's going to make that system chill for a second, right? It's going to calm it down. Now I got to make a plan what I'm going to do with this scorpion in the drawer. But I got to deal with it. I either got to keep the drawer closed forever in wonder, or I got to somehow fix this situation. And I'll come up with all kinds of crafty ways of handling that scorpion that's in that drawer. But it's a quick response. So in nature, the threats are quick responses. In nature, the immune system, not the immune system, the sympathetic response in nature is a quick system. It's not going to last. Like in a full-blown fight, it might last 90 seconds, right? It's not going to be a long experience dealing with the threat in nature in almost any scenario. Like there's just not. I guess you could get a bobcat chasing you for miles or something in the mountains, but most of the time not. Most of the time a bear or a lion or a tiger or some sort of threat that we have, a snake, something that is threatening to us in the environment, in nature, is going to be over rather quickly. So what we're going to do is we're going to use that frontal lobe to control that HPA axis. So now we're going to be able to calm ourselves down and put ourselves back into a parasympathetic rest and recover mode so that we can kind of make a good plan and process our environment the way it's supposed to, right? But what happens to us when we don't? What happens to us when we can't, when that threat that's happening in our world as human beings is a constant threat? That threat's driving through the 90 seconds and going into minutes now. And now that minute is turning into an hour. Now we've been threatened for a solid hour. We've been running this whole neurology for a solid hour. Now that hour turned into an entire day. I've been stressed out all day long, right? Now it's like the bobcat or the tiger or the lion or whatever it is is like right there, and it's stressing me out all day long. Well, that day turned into 3 days. I've been stressed out for 3 days. Well, that 3 days turned into an entire week. And then that entire week turned into a month. And then that month turned into a year. And I've been stressed out about that scenario for a year. So what happens in our body when that happens to us, right? That's where we get, and I don't know if you guys can see this, but if it's showing up on your page very well, but let me see if I can see it. Yeah. Over here on this side is the things that happen whenever we stay in that stress response for too long a period of time. And what we get is we get anxiety and depression right off the bat. That's one of the first things that happens to us is we get anxiety and depression. We also get accelerated aging. That's why I've thought it's so funny that we'll buy collagen. We'll buy collagen like it's going out of style, right? And we're getting some collagen here in the office for all you ladies that want collagen and that you want to keep your skin all beautiful, right? But we won't get out of that stress response. We won't work on those things that creates that stress response for us, right? But we'll do other things because that's what we know. And that's kind of what I'm trying to share with you tonight and on the show is like, hey, look, if you know it now, you understand you're going to increase aging. You're going to get ADD and ADHD. How is that working? Right? So why would you get ADD and ADHD whenever you're you're firing up that HPA axis and you're driving that hemisphere right there. Well, you're getting that because you've got all this attention over on the right hemisphere, but you don't have any ability to have focused attention on the left. That's it's like, oh, so like you're telling me that if I drive my right hemisphere over and 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 over again, that I won't get that activation of the left hemisphere and I'll lose my ability to have focused attention. And that's exactly what I'm telling you. That's exactly what I'm telling you. You'll lose the ability to have focused attention. There's too many people that think they have ADD and ADHD. And then they'll go to the doctor and they won't be able to pay attention. And so what do they get? They get some crap drug that didn't have anything to do with the reason that they had the lack of focused attention in the first place, right? Because we're stuck in that stress response that's worked for too long. Hey, we're coming up on a break. We've got just a few minutes and then we're going into a break. I hope you guys are getting something out of this show tonight. We're trying to do it a little bit more fun. I'll keep working on that. So you guys hang with us. We'll be back right after these messages. You're listening to Life with Jason Clemmons, DC on 98.7 Walk by Faith Radio. Look, I know some of you have ADD and ADHD, and I know that some of your kids have ADD and ADHD, and your teachers have been telling them that your kids they can't pay attention, and you don't know what to do, but no one's told you what to do. If you want to go get a drug, and that's what you want to do because that's what you've made the choice to do, and that you actually have a legitimate cognitive process about that. Like y'all have talked it out. This is what we want to do. God bless you. It's the United States of America. You can do what you want to do, right? But I really don't think that that's most parents. I think most parents are busy doing their thing and they didn't study right brain, left brain. They haven't read the Master and His Emissary book, right? So you go and your teachers are telling you that your kid can't sit still and pay attention, and what are we supposed to do? So you go to your pediatrician, and your pediatrician confirms that your kid can't sit still, and so what's the solution? The solution is, well, I don't know. What does the pediatrician tell us we should do? Well, we probably should get Ritalin or something. We probably should give them some sort of drug. You know, when my kids were born, I wouldn't even give them a pacifier. Like Caitlin's never had a pacifier in her whole life. The word pacifier in my brain irritated, it offended me to have a pacifier because I wasn't going to pacify my daughter into behaving properly. I know there's some neurological things with with kids and like to put things in their mouth and all that sort of thing, right? But there's no way that we're getting Ritalin. Like she's never even had a Tylenol. Like 1/2 dose, that's it in her whole life, right? So I just want to share it with you because maybe you've never heard anybody say it, and maybe it's really important to you that you don't want your child to have ADD or ADHD. Maybe you really don't want your grandchild dealing with that. And no one's ever told you why it's happening, and no one's ever told you what you could do about it. And because no one knew what you could do about it. So you just went along with what everybody else did, and now that's the normal because Joe and Susan's kid over here has this, and Michelle and Tom's kid over here, they have the same problem, and we all go to the same pediatrician, and they take their Ritalin at night, we take ours in the morning, or whatever the thing is, right? And it's like, okay, that's if that's what you want. But I don't necessarily think all of us want that. We just don't know. We just don't have a better understanding of it. We don't understand that there's a part of our brain that regulates the way that our brain functions, like it regulates the HPA axis. And it calms it down and it communicates it. Hey, sorry, we're back. This is Jason Clemmons, and we are back with Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. I'm glad you guys are staying with us. We're in chapter 2 of The Master and His Emissary. And so we're talking about attention, and we're getting into a little bit of ADHD. That was the last thing that we talked about, was what happens when we're driving this whole stress response system. And so then the next thing is type 2 diabetes and sugar handling problems, weight gain, right? And why would we have weight gain or diabetes from driving through this system, from being stressed? Well, the reason for that is cortisol release from our adrenal glands. When we fire our adrenal glands, one of the functions that cortisol does for us is it increases our blood sugar, because we need the blood sugar to fight or run, right? So that's one of the things that's happening right there, is we need to be able to fight or run, and we need blood sugar in order to do that. Well, blood sugar is going to create insulin, and insulin is going to tell us what to do with our calories. It's going to tell us what energy system. I was listening to Gary Brecka last night, the 10X guy, and he said one of the things, well, he's like, what is the purpose of insulin? Insulin is to tell you that you're only going to use glucose as an energy supply. That's what you're going to store it, and that's what you're going to do with extra calories. And so and where did that insulin come from? It came from sugar in the blood. And how did sugar get into the blood? Is it because I ate a Snickers bar or a bowl of that ice cream we were talking about last night? Or is it because I'm stressed out? And I'm stressed out, and I just can't seem to figure out how to decrease my weight. I can't get my weight to drop, and I'm not eating anything. How many ladies have said that? Men, not so much, but how many ladies have said that? I haven't changed anything I'm eating, and I cannot lose a pound. There must be something wrong with my thyroid gland, right? There must be something wrong with my metabolism, because I can't lose a pound, and I don't eat hardly anything. Well, if you're stressed out and you're driving that adrenal gland, and that adrenal gland is releasing that cortisol, then we're going to have a sugar problem, which means we're going to have a diabetes problem eventually, and we're going to have a weight gain problem. So those are some of the things that are going on right there. And then we get into obesity, right? And then we have trouble sleeping, and then our cholesterol goes up. That was one of my first conversations this morning. One of my first conversations this morning was, guy shows me his blood work, and he knows I love him, so I'm not coming at him right now. But he shows me his blood work, and his triglycerides are high, like 300 and something high, 349, I believe. His HDLs are low. Remember this. If you guys, this is from Dr. Lustig. If your HDLs are low and your triglycerides are high, you're going to have a problem with your total cholesterol. If your HDLs are low and your triglycerides are high, that's a bad combination. This is not what you want right there. What you want in your blood work is you want your HDLs to be high, and you want your triglycerides to be low. According to Dr. Lustig, that's what we desire right there. That's what we want, right? So he came in and he told me that, man, look at that. It's a little high, they said. And I was like, yeah, it's a little high. Like, you might want to consider. And he said, I also started taking testosterone shots. And you guys that have watched this show, you know how I feel about that deal, right? It's like, okay, all right. And all I could think of is that time when we were sitting around after we lost that football game, and I was coaching for Coach Dykes, and we were going around the table, and you guys have heard this story too, but we were going around the table, and we lost a game, and Coach Dykes said on Sunday morning we'd have a meeting and have a report, and the first coach said something about how his kids didn't play very well, and then the second coach said something about how his kids didn't play very well, and Coach Dykes stopped the meeting, and he said, man, I always have been taught that kids play pretty much like they're coached. And You could have heard a pin drop right there after that statement. The next coach said, "Coach, my kids didn't play. I didn't coach very well." That's what he said. He said, I must not have done a very good job coaching this week because my kids didn't play very well. Yeah, that's exactly what I felt like this morning. I didn't have that whole conversation with him this morning, but that's what I felt like this morning because I'm like, I'm not doing a very good job. I'm not doing a very good job coaching. Like I'd get fired. I'd get fired if I was a football coach today because one of my main men that's coming in this morning is taking testosterone shots and his cholesterol is high and all his triglycerides are high, which gets into all of his liver and it gets into how he's processing stuff. And what is it telling me? That's the thing on the list right there, right? What is on the list? Trouble sleeping and then high cholesterol. Right down there at the bottom. That's one of the things on the list. What would also drive your testosterone down? Being stressed out, right? Because think about that. That's a sex hormone. What is sex for? You think it's for pleasure? No, that's not what it's for. It's pleasurable to keep the species going forward. That's what it's pleasurable for, right? Why do we have sex? We reproduce to keep the species going forward. That's why we're having sex. Okay, would we open the drawer and take the scorpion out and throw it in the middle of the bed and then want to reproduce? Have you ever thought about that? Have you ever thought about that? Like if there was actually a tiger in your bedroom or anywhere else that you happen to be with your spouse, right? Do you think that there is any possibility that there's going to be any reproduction going on right there? No. Everybody knows that that's not going to happen, right? And this is a G-rated show. We're not getting into any sort of trouble by talking about this. But if your testosterone's low, I'm telling you right now, you should consider the fact that you're stressed out. You really might ought to consider that. Because one of the things that we do know for sure in chronic disease is that the parasympathetic receptors on the cell have degenerated. We've lost our ability to rest and recover. When we get to that point, we've lost our ability to rest and recover. So, attention, how we bring the world into us is different on the right side and the left side. And that starts the way that we respond to the world. And I was reading through my the Dr. Peterson's book, the Maps of Meaning. And he said there's 4 things that we really are trying to accomplish. What there is, what to do about what there is. There's a difference between 1 and 2, and what that difference is. And I know that's like very abstract, but it's really what is out in our environment? What are we dealing with on a daily basis? Is it threatening or is it not threatening? And in our 2 different sides of our brain, when we bring that into our environment, it determines whether or not it's threatening or not threatening. What there is out there, what is in the environment. That's, the purpose of the brain is to put us in touch with whatever is outside of ourselves. So I'm looking around, I'm taking that in. What is it? And what to do about what it is? What am I supposed to do about that external environment? And then that's gonna tell me, okay, there's a difference between those. There's a difference between what's out there and what I'm supposed to do about it. Like I'm sitting here right now inside my office, and just now as we're speaking, I'm facing my window, and there's a car out there in the parking lot with the headlights. It's pulled up to the building right there. Like all of a sudden, I've got headlights that's inside that I can see right outside the window. And it's got me wondering a little bit, what's that all about? Who's parked right outside my office and at 6:44 at night? Why is somebody parked in the parking lot? Right? That's the environment that I'm bringing into myself that all of a sudden is unknown to me. And that's what the right hemisphere is going to do. The right hemisphere is going to bring to me, it's going to bring the unknown. It's going to, now that car is backing up and now they're leaving. Now the threat is backing away, right? So the right hemisphere, it has greater dendritic overlap in the cortical columns. So we have greater interconnectivity. There's more white matter in the right hemisphere. It facilitates communication across regions of the brain. The left hemisphere has a tendency of communicating within itself. The right hemisphere has a tendency of communicating across the brain. We get a global picture. All of a sudden, the headlights went away. Whatever it was that was out there didn't have anything to do with me. It wasn't somebody coming to threaten me. Who knows what they were doing outside, right? They were doing their own thing. But how did it get my attention? I was talking to you. I'm looking at the camera. I'm talking to you. But out of my right brain, I paid attention to something caught my eye. And because of the alertness and the vigilance of my right hemisphere, all of a sudden now I have to analyze what's going on with those headlights right outside the office. As I'm trying to focus on what's going on with you, now my attention gets altered a little bit, and it brings me into that area right there. So the right hemisphere responds more to testosterone and pharmacological agents. Of course it does, right? It's the stress response side of our brain. Like it's going to respond. What is he going to say? It's like testosterone's driven down, so he's going to raise it up. He's going to raise it up because it's low, and that's the reason that he's having trouble. No, it's the other way around. The reason that it's low is because the brain's having trouble. What are we going to do about that? Are you walking? That's what I ask him. Are you walking? Are you getting any exercise? I walk to my office. I stand up a lot during the day. No, those answers are no. You might as well just say no and be honest with yourself, because if you're not getting any exercise, you're not getting any firing to that right hemisphere. And now you're going to have a problem in those areas, right? So diminished alertness, right hemisphere lesions. When someone has damage to that right hemisphere, they have diminished alertness associated with lapses in attention. If they have a damage to the right hemisphere, they lose alertness. Divided attention is it's supposed to be dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. I had a typo right there. Impairment of right inferior parietal lobe equals decreased global attention. Like that's where doctors that study this stuff come up with how they know it, because a person that has damage to that particular part of their brain loses their ability to function in those particular areas. So the right hemisphere alone attends to the peripheral field, directs attention to what comes to us from the edges of our awareness. The right hemisphere alone. New experiences induce changes in the right hippocampus, not the left. I'll say it again. New experiences induce changes in the right hippocampus, not the left. That's a part of our brain that helps us with remembering experiences and how we're going to respond to those things, right? New experiences don't fire that part of the brain. The right frontal lobe is especially important in flexibility of thought. Inferior parietal lobe, putting ourselves in other people's shoes. One of my teachers today said that she was feeling a little bit guilty. She's a young teacher. She hasn't been teaching but a couple of years, or maybe first, second year teacher. And she's teaching a section on something that's requiring group work. I actually had two teachers today that were talking about having to do group work and working in groups, like group projects, right? And she said, I just kind of facilitated it. I kind of went around and kind of helped the groups working. And she said, I felt a little bit guilty that I might not be teaching them something. And then I thought, no, this is requiring group work, and that's good. And I said, you have no idea what you're teaching them. Like, what group work does, it helps us be social, right? It's where empathy is on that right brain, right? Kids that are working in groups and they get fussy because they have to work in groups. Well, college kids do the same thing. They get fussy when they work in groups. And guess what? Grown people do the same thing. They get fussy when they work in groups. And fussiness, anger, comes from the left hemisphere because you're having to pull out of that left hemisphere and just be within yourself. The left hemisphere sees us as us inside ourselves, and the right hemisphere puts us in other people's shoes. It gives us the sense of community and the sense of involvement in a group and a team. And so we need those activities. That's why I say being social is the best thing we can do for the right hemisphere, because it gives us activity in that right hemisphere, which helps us run the pathway along there. The lateral prefrontal cortex inhibits the automatic tendency to espouse one's own point of view. If you're so left brain, hey, this is the way it's going to be. This is my opinion. This is the way it's going to happen. I'm going to tell you how it's going to be. This is what's happening, and I'm going to know, and I already know, and all those sort of things, right? The right hemisphere is the wise, mature, calm, peaceful. I don't necessarily have to share my view with everyone here. Everyone here doesn't. I'm going to on my show, obviously. I'm going to share my view with you, right? That's funny. But if that lateral prefrontal cortex inhibits that automaticness of wanting to do that. You see a little kid, like he's got to say something. How many times did you tell your child, shh, I'm talking? Right? How many times you tell your little 4-year-old, your 5-year-old, your 6-year-old, hey, shh, we're talking right now. Don't interrupt us while we're talking, right? How many times do you have to tell that to your 22-year-old? Not near as often, right? Why? Because the 22-year-old now has upper brain function and the little one doesn't. Patients with right frontal deficit, not left, become incapable of empathy. I'll say that one more time. Patients with right frontal deficit, not left frontal deficit, but right frontal deficit, become incapable of empathy. I don't care if my right brain is not working. I don't care anything about you. I'd just as soon run over you in the street. I don't even care about you. You're just a piece of material to me. You're just an object that I care nothing about if my right brain is not working. And think about that, right? Okay, there's things that I don't think I have it on this particular slide, but when we see people under functional MRI, when we see people, it lights up our right brain. When we see cartoons or animation, it lights up our left brain. Because what our brain actually knows is that that's just objects. It's not the whole picture. It's just really, it's like it's a drawing. It's an object. It's not a life thing. So when we overfocus all the time, and the other thing is that the left hemisphere over here, the left hemisphere excess dopaminergic. Sometimes let me take my glasses off. Yeah, can't even say it. Excess dopamine. I'll break it down that way. Transmission can lead to a freewheeling need to collect and categorize. If you've ever known a schizophrenic person, they do a lot of that stuff, right? An autistic person, right? Like Rain Man. What was Rain Man doing? Rain Man was counting all the time. He's counting toothpicks, right? He was counting cards. He was like, he knew everything. They're like he's categorizing, and he was constantly working. Why? Because we've lost some of that right side to left side activity in the brain, that the brain has different sides, right? The left hemisphere has a hard time disengaging. If the right hemisphere doesn't work, nothing inhibits the left from locking on. Familiarity causes the left to attend all the more. That is something that I actually said this week. Is this morning. It was this morning. We were getting dressed. Leslie said, which one of these shoes should I wear? She had a pair of brown Uggs and she had a pair of tennis shoes. And she was like, which one? Now, as a man, you better watch out how you answer that question, right? You've got to, if you haven't learned that lesson before, you got to understand. I've already there. You already got trained in this we've been together 36 years. I know how I better answer that question. But I said, babe, I think either one of them go today. I think it'd be great. But as she turned to go back in her closet, my brain thought to itself, the brown Uggs. It's probably when she was asking me, the brown Uggs is what I was thinking. And then as she turned to go in, I thought, she probably looked cuter in those white tennis shoes today. But I didn't say any of that. I was just thinking it in my brain. And then she said, I think I'm going to wear the white tennis shoes today because it's raining outside and I don't want to get my Uggs all wet. And I was like, you know what? I was actually thinking the white tennis shoes would be better. And I said to her out loud, I think I initially thought the brown Uggs because they were more familiar to me. So the ones that were more familiar to me, it was my left hemisphere. I have a tendency of going in that direction again and again and again. Familiarity causes left to attend all the more, right? I see it. That's what we're going to do. We're going to do it that way. That's what I like. I like to do that. I like to do it that way. I like to do it that way, and that's the way we always did it that way. That's the way Mom and Dad did it. But we've always. Why are we arguing about that? That's the way it's always been, right? That right there is a left hemisphere dominated thought process, because the familiarity right there is what has us. We'll just attend to it again. We'll attend to I will bring into myself the thing that I'm familiar with. I don't need to determine whether or not it's a threat. It's just already to the left side. And then I get stuck in that pattern and I can't see the whole picture of things. There is a difference between what goes on the right side and what goes on the left side. Right frontal lobe is responsible to inhibit immediate response to environmental stimulus. I can calm down a little bit. I don't need to just jump at everything, right? Problem solving. Right permits multiple options. That's what I'm saying. The right side brain would evaluate both of the shoes, evaluate the rain, evaluate what's going on, give me multiple options. The left side brain just wants to jump right into the same pair that it's familiar with. The left hemisphere, local communication within regions, responds to dopamine. Healthy left hemisphere has a preference for choice reactions. A healthy left hemisphere has a preference for choice reactions. Focused attention, left orbitofrontal cortex plus the basal ganglia, just parts of your brain. Left hemisphere inhibits the breadth of attention the right brings to bear. The right hemisphere brings in all of the attention. The left hemisphere focuses it and inhibits the right brain from bothering us. When your child cannot inhibit, when they can't focus, and they're looking at all the things that are around them on the outside, it's because they don't have that healthy communication between right side and left side brain. That's where we lose that. If we lose that healthy communication, then we can't stop ourselves, because what has to happen, if I'm looking right at you and then the lights show up in the window, my left brain has to tell my right brain, not right now, I'm focused on what I'm doing. Now, if my right brain thinks it's strong enough of a threat, it'll override that and it'll make me go. But I can't just be jumping at every little thing that's out here that's coming to me in my right hemisphere. I got to be able to focus. But if I don't have that pattern firing properly, then I don't have the ability to inhibit, and now I'm jumping around. And that's what it's kind of saying right there. Left hemisphere damage, narrowing the attention window. What is known is in the left hemisphere. Prioritizes the expected. Its process is predictive. It's less efficient when knowledge needs to be revised. That one of the coolest words I learned in this book was recognize. But he didn't say recognize. He said recognize. And he's the first person I've ever heard say that. The cognitive function, the thought, doesn't happen on the left. It's not new stuff. It's just redoing old stuff over and over again. There's a difference between the two. The right side brings me the whole picture. The left side brings me what I already know. Right there. What is known? Decreased right hemisphere, if one thing works, they get stuck on that and they'll apply the same strategy over and over again. I remember, we don't have time to go into it, but I remember 8th grade English. I did that. I was so convinced that I had the right answer, and then I turned in the right answer, and then it was wrong, and she showed me what the answer was, and it was like, well, I missed that completely. Hey, we've come to the end of the show. I hope you guys had a good show. I hope you guys have a great night. We will be back here tomorrow night at 6. Maybe we'll hash out a little bit more of this stuff and see what we got. So if you got anything I can add, just let me know.